Welcome back to episode 21 of the Backseat Fighter Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Binns. I'm so excited to be back on the podcast grind. Sorry about the little intermission, the little break we had between the Sean Strickland-Dricus du Plessis rematch and coming in this weekend, the main event between Henry Cejudo and Song Yadong. I'm just really excited to be back on the grind. I've had some good, life updates in the last couple of weeks, in terms of getting some job opportunities here. And just working in a professional environment. But don't get me wrong, my one true love, the thing I really want to be doing is this podcast, talking about mixed martial arts, talking about the greatest sport on earth, and that is just fighting in general. I'm sipping some tea. Get your popcorn out, get your tea out, whatever you're drinking. I want us all to be really locked in here and talk about something very important, which is this weekend's fight, Henry Cejudo versus Song Yadong. And we're going to get into analyzing the main event. Also, I just wanted to mention very, very quickly that if you are not subscribed, please subscribe. About 94% of the people watching these videos and the short form content are not yet part of the family. Come join the Backseat Fighter Podcast community. This is where we grow MMA healthily. We talk about things that actually matter. We're not just here saying things for views and likes. And maybe I should be, but just come join, subscribe, and yeah, let's just get straight back to the episode. I do want to say thank you so much for all the support in the last episode where we talked about Dricus du Plessis fighting Sean Strickland in that rematch. I got a lot of, interaction on the short form content, also on the long form content. And, I am really trying to grow this space and do it in a good way. And I thought dedicating an entire episode, not just because I have some more commitments at the moment, but really getting into the main events, the big fights that people want to talk about and really analyzing them from a technical point of view, gave me a really good opportunity to get my prediction more correct than I would have thought or would have previously have done. And I'm not trying to say, this channel and this podcast is about getting things right in terms of predictions, the pick culture that I told you so. These are the discussions that we've had recently earlier on in the podcast, in the series. Well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the guy to come in here and say, I predicted Dricus du Plessis would win all of those rounds and win quite easily in that matchup against Sean Strickland, even though I did. Because that's not really where the focus is. The focus is on the fighters, the technical aspect, the stepping in the ring, the concepts around fighting and why these guys are so special, not only in terms of the general population, but as athletes, they are just stand alone in their own, sort of category. The pantheon of being a great fighter is on a higher peak in the mountain range than the pantheon of any other sports, in my opinion, just because of the consequences and risks these guys are taking. And I know I'm going on a bit of a ramble to start this episode, but I just wanted to say that, great episode last week, and I'm not coming here to talk about just me getting that right. I'm just excited about where this is going, and I think maybe from now on, for at least a short while, whilst I've got some other commitments going on, we'll be getting more specific into the main events, and if there's any fights on the cards that you guys want me to talk about, or I just really want to talk about as well, I'll get into those. But for now, I think at least this episode, again, we'll just be getting into the main event this weekend, which for the third time, is Cejudo versus Song Yadong. So let's get into that. Henry Cejudo, let me start with him just because he is Triple C, just because he is a legend of this sport, a living, walking legend. And don't get it wrong, he does have that cringe character he puts on. He does have that, facade that kind of annoys a lot of people, not only in the fandom, not maybe in the media, perhaps, not me, but maybe some other fighters. I don't know. It definitely gets under people's skin, and people sometimes maybe take away from his legacy, take away from his greatness just because of, his character that he puts on and the way he promotes fights. But not get it twisted. Let's not do that. Don't get it twisted. This is a guy who is a Triple C, triple champion, Olympic gold medalist, for wrestling, which is why he gets on so well with, Khabib, with, Islam and those Dagestani camps, because they respect him so much because of that Olympic gold in wrestling. And let's not get it twisted. This guy was a 2-weight world champion inside the UFC in his prime, obviously winning that flyweight belt, then going up bantamweight championship against Marias, knocking out Dominic Cruz in devastating fashion, although we'll get into that in a second. But now, obviously, he took that time out in 2020. He said, I retired. I want to retire on top. We saw another one of our greats retire, and it was kind of like that Khabib approach initially. Go out on top, go out while you still have your faculties about you. Go out on a win. Go out when people still remember you as the greatest in the world, and don't come back. Except Henry Cejudo decided to come back And in doing so, with the legacy, with the record, with the resume that he had, obviously comes in and gets that title shot straight away against Aljamain Sterling. And so many people thought that Henry Cejudo still had enough to get the job done against Aljamain. But that win against Henry Cejudo kind of cemented Aljamain as the best bantamweight in the world just because of the respect people have in the community for Henry Cejudo. So he comes back in against Aljo and he doesn't look quite like himself. Aljamain able to dominate on the ground, or at least compete more than people thought he would be able to do so on the ground. And then what I really want to get into, and what I'm really going to analyze Henry coming into this fight, is his most recent outing against Merab, which was about 1 year ago. And I'm going to take a little sip of tea because it's about to get a bit spicy, you know what I mean? Put this down for a second. The reason I want to talk about Merab, the Merab fight coming into this matchup with Song Yadong, is basically to contextualize the Henry Cejudo we are talking about now, and maybe not the Henry Cejudo that deserves to be spoken about, if that makes sense, if you can understand the difference between what I'm saying. So obviously Henry Cejudo comes off that loss against Aljamain Sterling. You'd see him go for Merab Dvalishvili, probably one of the hardest matchups in the bantamweight division, now the current champion, probably one of the most unbeatable, or a fighter with one of the senses or auras of invincibility around him right now. Henry Cejudo goes in against him in a 3-round fight, I believe it was. And in that first round, looks good. Henry Cejudo has one of those very aesthetically pleasing stances, kind of keeps an almost bladed stance, very wide stance, bounces in and out, keeps that left hand out in his opponent's face. And you see him looking good. You see him firing the shots. He looks slick. But one thing you do notice probably instantly in that fight is Henry Cejudo, always at this age, at 37, I think he was when he took that fight with Merab, does look a little bit heavier, does look a little bit thicker. Anyway, throws that 1-2, landing great shots, creating exchanges, kind of dominating Merab on the feet, in my opinion, and using that high IQ that Henry Cejudo has. I think you even see in that fight on the broadcast, Joe Rogan, I believe, alludes to the fact that many people have worked with Henry Cejudo and they haven't seen a fighter as meticulous, as prepared as he is in terms of the strength and conditioning, in terms of the diet, in terms of the specific exercises, how he's working on his skill set throughout camp specified to his opponent. So you do see the element straight away in that first round, you think, oh my God, Henry Cejudo does have a plan for Merab here. And he's creating exchanges by which Henry Cejudo is striking more technical. So he was always going to win those really technical in close matchups. And you see him create that collision very early on in the first round. Merab kind of steams in. And then you see Henry Cejudo miss with the right hand, kind of rotates back onto his back foot, launches that looping left hook, and it wobbles Merab. And what you see, Henry Cejudo tries to close in on him, goes for a swing, doesn't get the finish, doesn't connect again on Merab Dvalishvili. And the fight gets taken to the ground and you start to see Henry Cejudo kind of on top of Merab Dvalishvili, kind of getting those nippy shots in there, getting the ground and pound, not necessarily threatening submissions, but controlling Merab as he tries to get up, rotating to the back, keeping on the back of Merab Dvalishvili, and you think, okay, Henry Cejudo is really in this fight. But then round 2 comes and you start to see Henry Cejudo gas out completely. And to be honest with you, when you see Henry Cejudo gas out, the fight changes completely. And it starts to look a little bit more sloppy. Henry starts to get clipped with some shots. Merab, for all that we talk about his cardio, that third lung that he has, which is something I will get onto, he does have the ability to land shots. He has crisp striking when it counts. Land some good shots on Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo, great chin, able to take those shots and keep coming. But what you see towards the end of that second round is Merab Dvalishvili start taking down Henry Cejudo, Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, and kind of latch onto that guillotine and is laughing and kissing him on the back of the neck. We've seen Merab Dvalishvili do that with Sean O'Malley since then. We've seen him do it to Umar Nurmagomedov. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Henry Cejudo is some sort of inferior fighter in general, but it does mean that Henry Cejudo, towards the end of that second round, was definitely gassing out. And in that third round, you do see a bit more urgency from Henry Cejudo. He comes out a little bit more aggressive, starts throwing the strike, starts throwing the 1-2 harder. And you can just tell that Henry still has that genius, that IQ, and that mind for the game. He still has the ability to break down his opponents, understands their weakness, and from a mental point, he's still completely in. My only worry is that you're starting to see, at least from Henry Cejudo's point of view, a physical decline that is natural, that comes with age. But if this was at a different weight class, if this was at heavyweight, for example, it wouldn't be as noticeable. But when you're in the bantamweight divisions, the flyweight divisions, I would even say the featherweight and lightweight divisions, the moment you start getting to your late 30s, the difference in speed, the difference in reaction time, the difference in ability to, hold on to guys, the ability to navigate the footwork, keep the range is so much harder because of the dependency on the speed and physical attributes that you need at bantamweight. And it gets so much harder at 38 years old for Henry Cejudo. And you know what? He looked good. He looked fast. He looked all right. But the cardio is what let him down. The question is, is his body still durable enough to get through an 8 to 12 week training camp? Because don't get me wrong, I think Henry Cejudo could still mix it up with the best of them, and we're going to get onto Yadong and obviously my final prediction for this fight. But in a 3-round fight with Merab, and let's not get it twisted, Merab puts a pace on everybody that gasses them up. We just saw Umar Nurmagomedov practically pass out in the fight with Merab. But, can Henry Cejudo's body hold up physically insofar as he doesn't get an injury which prevents him from working on his cardio? Because I honestly, let me know, guys, in the comments. Let me know on the short form content if this is in a clip. Henry Cejudo came into that Merab Dvalishvili fight injured. I don't remember exactly what the ailment was. I know it's probably a groin or something like that. It was a tear and something that prevented Henry from either, wrestling or sparring or doing cardio. So his physical condition wasn't up to par. But is that going to happen again? Does that not continue to be the case the older you get? It's very, very unique in the sport of MMA to not get injuries and to not get surgery or injuries that require surgery. I think Jim Miller actually hasn't had any surgeries in his career. So for somebody like Henry Cejudo, the question is, can his physical ability catch up to his mental still sharpness, mental ability to break down his opponents, their patterns, their rhythm, their timing? And, can it catch up with that mental sharpness that he still obviously has? When you listen to Henry Cejudo break down fighters, you don't always agree in terms of, and I'm saying you don't always agree, as in you don't see, for example, Kamaru Usman always agreeing with Henry Cejudo about how he breaks down fights. But what you can't deny is that he has a methodology that has worked, that still works. And you look at that Merab fight, he's landing. You look at that ability, I think it's even that third round when he has gassed out, to kind of throw a jab, fake the blitz with the footwork and go down to the low kick. He's a very, very crafty, very intelligent UFC fighter, ex-champion and legend in this game. So my question is, are we going to see the Henry Cejudo that, knocked out Dominic Cruz with that kind of knee flurry, vicious ground and pound, where obviously Dominic Cruz gets the famous quote afterwards that the referees smell like alcohol and cigarettes before the fight, and that the referee made a horrible decision. Are we going to see the Henry Cejudo that absolutely ground and pounded and brutalized Moraes or Reese in his flyweight days? Are we going to see the guy who absolutely destroyed an EPO, TJ Dillashaw, who had cut down all the way down to 185? Are we going to see that, Demetrius Johnson, victorious, elite technical, high pace, high octane, durable, cardio, oh my God. This is what happens when you take a week off the podcast, my friends. Are we going to see a fighter like Henry Cejudo who can return to that level of cardio, that championship level of cardio? Because this is a 5-round main event. Let's not forget that, right? This isn't a 3-round event 3-round fight where he was gassed against Merab. This is a 5-round main event. Are we going to see that? Probably not. We're not going to see that. It's just not necessarily possible, especially at bantamweight. It's a division where you do see guys kind of, I don't want to say fall off a cliff. That's very disrespectful to Henry Cejudo, and actually inaccurate because I don't think he's fallen off a cliff. It's just that the minor decline in speed, strength, whatever it is, right? Sharpness are so much more noticeable at the lighter weight divisions in comparison to heavyweight, light heavyweight, even middleweight, right? So I don't know. I'm not, obviously Henry Cejudo's not coming into this fight in the best of form, and the best of victories. You know, he's coming off a 2-loss streak here, but against two elite fighters in Aljamain Sterling and Merab Dvalishvili. Now for Song Yadong, and this is where we're going to move on to his opponent here. I mean, it surprises you that he's only 27 years old. The amount of experience he has at the UFC already at this age is quite astounding. I mean, you look at the names that Song Yadong has fought against. He's always got Peter Yan on the resume, Chris Gutierrez, Ricky Simon, you know, Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Moraes. You know, these are very, very big names for somebody who is only 27 years old. You know, Chito Malombera, he has a win over him as well. Cody Starman, I'm just looking through here. You know, these are all recognizable names that, you know, for I almost said the bad word there that I don't like to use. But for people who don't watch UFC so adamantly or so, you know, habitually, and for people that are really into the sport, we know people like Cody Starman are not just any regular person to be fighting so early on in your UFC career. So Song Yadong, do I think he can win this fight? Yes, of course. I think both of these guys have a chance here. But let's get into, you know, some of the things that I've seen from Song that make me both confident in him and hesitant. I'll start with his strengths that I believe are going to give him a very good edge in this fight. First of all, he's a lot bigger than Henry Cejudo. He's 5'8", and when you look at him, his legs are absolutely ginormous. They're thick. His back is very muscular. He's got very good long reach, and he's so fast. And he throws with vicious power, vicious intent every single time. The thing with Song Yadong is that his counters are very good. He kind of has that similar, it's not the technical ability and it's not with the volume that Peter Yan can output, but it's a very similar style insofar as his insofar as his kind of ability to shell up and throw off your punches. So his ability to counter, feel your attacks on his gloves and go straight from there to connect with you. Very, very similar. Very good ability. Very good power. I mean, obviously he knocked out Marcus Moraes as well, I believe. I think it was with a left lead uppercut, kind of a corkscrew, kind of shovel, cross, straight right hand that connects with Moraes and puts him out. So he's got power, he's got speed, and that's something that you do see in every single one of his fights, even most recently with Peter Yan. But there's a kind of hesitancy to his game. I mean, you look at him when he fought Peter Yan, when he fought Corey Sandhagen, and when he fought somebody even like Chris Gutierrez. When he fights somebody who is very capable on the feet, who is rangy, who has a great understanding of entering the pocket, or throwing the 1-2, or throwing simple combinations, and being active, he kind of struggles to find the rhythm. He kind of struggles to keep that pressure. He's able to keep that pressure, pushing them up against the cage, but sometimes he doesn't use that jab enough to close the range and go actually attack his opponents. Because when he does let go, when he does let his punches go, as you see when he fights Moraes, as you see even when he fought Corey Sandhagen a couple of times, he's able to land. When he fought Chris Gutierrez and drops him, I believe, what is the round he drops him in? I believe it's round 4 he drops Chris Gutierrez. You know, you definitely see that when he decides, it's very successful. I just think he's kind of has a mental block sometimes. If somebody is comfortable, able to kind of throw those teeps, throw attacks to the legs, push him back with the body, keep a hand in his face, you know, and sometimes you do see that kind of hesitancy from him, which I think Henry Cejudo is going to notice. Henry Cejudo is going to be like, okay, if I can, you know, kind of occupy him with the leg kicks, if I can keep a jab in front of him, if I can shoot the takedown, maybe I don't even get it, and he reverses me or he just, you know, stuffs it in general. If I keep him thinking about stuff, I'll be able to kind of slow him down, make him hesitant, make him, you know, second guess himself, and find my opportunities to both go to the body and then up to the head. I think Henry Cejudo will be looking at that, to be honest with you. But, you know, the best thing about, you know, Song Yadong is his relaxation and willingness to be in there. And I know that's kind of a narrative, intangible kind of discussion, which really doesn't do much service to the type of media I'm trying to create with this podcast. But I do want to mention it because of two things. Because it kind of leads into the previous problem where I talked about him kind of being a little bit hesitant, but it also talks about the benefits and his mentality in adversity. So let me talk about its positive impact, I believe. He's so relaxed in there, so willing to be in the pocket, so willing to be in the fight, and that obviously comes with his kind of young age as well, that even in that Corey Sandhagen fight, when he gets that devastating cut over the left eyebrow that looks really, really bad, bleeding all over the place, you kind of see him go back to the stool, I believe it is. You know, they're looking at the cut. It's bad. It's not great. But he comes out for the next round and he's the one pushing the pace on Sandhagen, who up to that point had really had all the success in the fight. You know, clean 1-2s, landing to the body, throwing spinning attacks, felt very comfortable. When Song Yadong decided to kind of push the pace a little bit more, increase the output. And when he did that, he definitely had success against Corey. Was able to even land some takedowns, I believe, and get on top. So at the end of the day, it does lead him, that relaxation, that comfortability in the fight was able to lead him into a kind of very big comeback round for somebody who was so young to show that kind of level of reserve and composure to fight through an eye injury like that, where he basically said that after the fight, you see him go up to Corey Sandhagen and say, I couldn't see anything at all. So, you know, that's a huge, huge badge of honor for him, and kind of shows you he's got a special mentality as well. But listen, man, when we're talking about a guy who's so relaxed in there, he comes out against Chris Gutierrez in that first round and he doesn't throw enough because he's kind of comfortable, kind of just relaxed, and sometimes maybe he doesn't have that enough urgency. And again, I think there are two ways of viewing everything, right? And when I spoke to Bobby Winther, who is, you know, a great fighter in Cage Warriors, who's definitely destined for the UFC, go watch that interview if you haven't already. The way he looked at things was very, very interesting. He kind of spoke about how before a fight, nerves are just the same thing as excitement. It's just how you kind of perceive those things. And I think for Song Yadong, maybe he thinks right now, I don't want to panic. I don't want to panic and just go and push the pedal and get hurt or get clipped, right? But isn't urgency just a different way of looking at panic? Isn't there like a controlled panic, which is understanding, you know what, I've got to set the tone of this fight, not let them get in a rhythm? And I think that's the only problem with Song Yadong's game, is that sometimes he's very content to be there because his defense is very good. If you watch him fight, he keeps a very high left shoulder, keeps that chin tucked. But he does, you know, absorb damage and he kind of lets his opponents get into a rhythm. Now, don't listen to me. I've never been in there, right? I'm not a fighter. That's the whole point of this podcast. It's the Backseat Fighter Podcast. I'm a backseat fighter. I'm talking to fans and fighters about what they should do when I've never even been in there, right? I get that. And listen, it's worked out very well for Song Yadong, man. He's 21-7, huge experience in the UFC, and he's only lost to kind of the best of the best so far. But when it comes to somebody like Henry Cejudo, he's going to be looking at Song Yadong's high guard. Okay, he's going to be like, okay, I'm much shorter than Song Yadong. I can shoot under those arms, get to those hips, and take him down. And he'll also be looking at the fact that sometimes Song Yadong isn't active enough with the hands in terms of his pressure. Song Yadong will push you up against the fence with the footwork, he'll be in your face, but his actual punch output won't be that high. So Henry will be looking at that going, okay, I can get to his body here with the punches. I can actually have some time, have some space to tee off. The thing, as I want to go back to right now, is with Henry Cejudo, does he have that confidence in his durability and endurance to kind of empty the tank? I don't want to say empty the tank. That's not right words to use, but deal out enough damage to slow Song Yadong down into those 4th and 5th rounds, because that's where this fight is going to be won. You see, Song Yadong is durable. Song Yadong takes fights to the late rounds if he doesn't knock you out. And, you know, he's ready for war, and he will be again. You know, this is a guy who came off that PER loss now, and it hasn't fought since then, which was in March last year. So he's come off a long wait as well. And he's kind of come in with this new mentality, right? This new aura. And he just looks so comfortable. And he's got a great team around him as well, obviously with Uriah Faber, all of the guys at Team Alpha Male. So it is going to be a battle of kind of intellectual mixed martial arts here going on in the corners. I'm just very, very excited about this main event. But if I had to give a prediction, gosh, it's so hard. Man, it's just because I know the strengths. I know the strengths of Song Yadong, the speed, the strength, the ability to counter. The leg kicks are very, very, very good. When he does decide to throw and sit down, it does absolute vicious damage to his opponents. And he has the benefit of being 11 years younger, but also in his physical prime at 27 years old. But Henry Cejudo's IQ is so high for this game. He will be looking at Song Yadong saying, this is a good style for me. If you had both these guys in their prime, obviously you would pick Henry Cejudo because of his accolades, because of the levels he's reached in the sport, because of his wrestling prowess. But I'm talking not even like, let's play a fun game here for a second. Take all the accolades out of it. You put Henry Cejudo with a gas tank. Henry Cejudo, with relatively minor injuries in comparison to probably what he had coming into that Merab Dvalishvili fight. I think he takes this fight quite dominantly. It's just whether or not you believe Henry Cejudo can replicate what he once had. And it's one of those sad instances now where people will start to undeservedly and without merit write off Henry Cejudo's legacy if he does not win this fight. If Henry Cejudo doesn't win this fight, obviously then there's going to be questions about retirement, which, he already came out of retirement once. And from that point on, they kind of sometimes, at least in the short term, this conversation will be lost about the contributions Henry Cejudo has made in this sport inside that cage. But, I keep on going on kind of rants about stuff. But I do have to make a prediction. I am going to say that, it's very, very difficult for me. I'm going to say that Henry Cejudo gets this done. I don't know, actually. I'm going to go Song Yadong. I'm going to say Song Yadong gets it done this weekend. I think, I just said it there basically. My thought process is that I don't see Henry Cejudo at this point in his career at 38 years old with the wear and tear, with the mileage, with the kind of emotional roller coaster that his career has been, the heights he has reached already. I don't see a Song Yadong fight being something that can mentally get him back to the place he once was. And I think physically he is going to be physically his body will not give him the tools necessary to push into the 4th and 5th round to win this fight, in my opinion. And that's something that I really don't like saying, because I do believe that Henry Cejudo's mind and sharpness in there is still at an all-time high. The way he's able to, you're going to see, at least in that first round, Henry Cejudo win it for sure. Maybe the second, depending on how healthy he comes into this fight. Because he can break down any opponent in this entire sport. And people go to him and ask him for advice. They go to him and ask about his thoughts on fighters, on certain techniques, on patterns, on how they should approach certain situations, both on the feet and on the ground. So, it's very, very, very difficult for me to say that, but I do believe Song Yadong is going to get that win. Now I'm going to move on, but this card in general has obviously faced a lot of issues. Whether that's because of, I think this is the Seattle card, right? Is it not? I believe it's faced a lot of issues, right? With cancellations and things like that. But, Brendan Allen versus Anthony Hernandez is an absolutely fantastic co-main event, because that's a fighter in Brendan Allen that I've wanted to have on the show. He's a friend of Tuco Tokos, who we've had on the show. And I do want to speak to Brendan Allen. Hopefully at some point that can take place. And this is actually a rematch of an LFA fight I believe they had for the middleweight title down there years ago. And I don't know if a lot of people know that, but this is a rematch. And Anthony Fluffy Hernandez came out on top in that first fight and quite dominantly too. But what you've seen from Brendan Allen over the years, especially in the UFC, being the top, I think he's ranked number 9 at middleweight. This is a guy who's prepared for war, who is going to absolutely give his all. Sometimes you've seen fights take a little bit of a dip in terms of his cardio, but his output, his willingness to stay in there is unmatched in my opinion. And if you ask someone like Tuco Tokos, who trains with him every day, he's an absolute killer. And I think this fight is going to look a little different to the first one. I don't know who's going to win it. I'm not going to make a prediction on it, but I'm very, very excited for that. And, down there at Killcliff, and especially with Brendan Allen, if you look at that fight, I believe it is with Chris Curtis, the second one, where, Brendan Allen comes out on top 3-2, in my opinion. Yes, yeah. You have Henry Hoof in the corner saying, this is a mixed martial arts fight. We don't need to box with him, because Chris Curtis was getting the better of him in the boxing exchanges. But it's also a complete and utter compliment to Brendan Allen that his coach has so much confidence in all areas of his, ability, in all areas of mixed martial arts. So I'm very, very excited to see Brendan Allen get back in there and kind of prove some of the haters wrong, obviously coming off that decision loss against Imavov. And we just saw what Imavov did to Israel Adesanya. So there's no shame in that loss at all. I mean, you've also got some really huge fights on this card. You got Rob Font, Gene Silva, Alonzo Menifield, who we've seen, in exciting fights in the past. Ion Kutalaba, that's the guy. Isn't that the guy that faked getting knocked out and then the referee actually stopped it? I believe it is. You got Andre Fili. Did Andre Fili get knocked out by Dan Ige? I believe that's one of the most vicious knockouts I've ever seen. So Andre Fili's on the card. One of my favorite fighters, Mansour Abdul Malik, Dream Podcast guest, is on there. Ricky Simon, who actually fought Song Yadong. I think he got knocked out, I believe. Javid Basharat as well. If you know these guys' names, it's actually a very decent card coming in here this weekend. But I'm just so happy to be back on the podcast. And I know that was a bit of a quick one in terms of the level of analysis I want to go into. But, the podcasts are going to look a little different from here on out. We're going to be getting some good stuff coming in on the way. I do want to make a couple quick announcements. The hoodies for the giveaway for hitting 50 subscribers are still on the way. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about that. There just needs some little things to be set up in order for that to be carried on through. I'm gonna be doing a slight change technologically to the reactions, so hopefully those will be a little bit better as well. What else am I thinking about doing? Oh yes, there might be some new things coming to the set right here, and don't worry, we're going to get more guests on. And I think we'll be seeing some Brazilian fighters coming on soon from a very famous gym. So don't you guys worry about that. What I do want to take a second to say is thank you so much for, for the comments and the likes I get, or whether that's on the actual episodes, whether that's on shorter form videos that I put on the channel, whether that's on the Spotify, whether that's on the TikTok or the Instagram. It does actually provide me with more than just a number on a screen. It provides me with, the actual interactions of what motivate me. I want to create a space in which we are improving this dialogue that I'm trying to lead, and that I want to be not only in combat sports media, but sports media in general. I'm very tired of narratives. That's why I want to make long form content, but unfortunately short form content does have to be made. I just want a healthier environment and ecosystem in which fighters can express themselves, fans can express themselves, media personalities can express themselves, because so often it gets saturated by negativity, kind of surface level, idiotic stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for the barbershop talk. I'm all for the casual conversation about, he's shit, he's good. But, those deserves their own specific environments, right? And I think we have a responsibility when talking about fighting specifically to give these athletes the utmost respect and the most deserved time to be spoken about. Because this is not a game in the same way basketball is a game. It's not a game in the same way football is a game. It's not a game in the same way American football is a game, which, you could argue obviously is more vicious than obviously the former two I mentioned. But it's more than a W on the record. It's more than the paycheck you get. It really is about like, you can lose anything, right? You can lose any sport, but you're going to really lose, like you're losing a lot and you're sacrificing a lot, not only getting in there and perhaps getting hurt inside the cage, but dedicating those 8 to 12 to 16 weeks beforehand in a very, very hard training camp that so often causes injury, that so often, accumulates damage, whether that's to the brain, whether that's to your body parts, whether that's to your actual life and mental health as well. So I just wanted to mention really quick there that, the point of this podcast is to appreciate all of these fighters, to build a healthy ecosystem for combat sports media and dialogue. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this episode. There's going to be some people coming on. Maybe we'll have some more discussion with other people and not just me. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys want and improvements from this place. I'm open to all criticism. So yeah, I will see you next time for episode 22 of the Backseat Fighter Podcast. It's been Charlie Binns. I'll see you next time. Grab a tea, why don't you?